applies in Chapter 11. Chapter 11, it's Section 1113. And that says when you file a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, you have to ask the court to approve the rejections of the contract. Now, when they rewrote Chapter 9 a couple of years ago, and then again they modified it in 1994 when they added more judges, they've never included that section 1113 into Chapter 9. It's not there. There's a lot of discussion amongst scholars and law professors and commentators about whether or not this means you can reject a union contract. The true answer is we don't truly know. The indication is that it looks like we can. We can nullify it, and that there is no hearing. But this is where the good faith comes in again on the motion to dismiss, because that motion can always be brought. So in all probability, I believe that it can be done. Now, this issue arose also in the Orange County case. And to understand how that applies, you sort of need to understand a little bit about how the judicial system in the bankruptcy world works, because bankruptcy is a federal procedure. It's not a state court procedure. That particular case was filed in San Diego, which is the Southern District of California. And in that, excuse me, I'm sorry, it was filed in San Diego. And in that case, the trial judge said, well, I think that Supreme Court case does apply and that you can reject these labor contracts, but not all of them. He said, you can reject everything but the grievance procedure and one other item. I forget exactly what it is without looking at my notes right this minute. But he sort of did a flop on it. He said, yeah, it applies, but it doesn't apply in these areas. Well, about that time, Orange County resolved some of their differences, and the economy picked up, and it never came to push versus shove. It never got past the trial court level. It never got appealed. And in the bankruptcy world, we have a strange way of appealing things. We have to file a notice of appeal within 10 days, 10 calendar days of the judge's decision, not the normal 30 or 60 like the state courts have. And then it can go to one of 3 different courts, mind you. In a traditional matter, if it's a consumer case like you and I might have, it would probably go to the bankruptcy appellate panel in Pasadena. You have the option of bypassing that and going to the district court, which would be the Eastern District of California, and the normal sitting judges in Sacramento would hear it. Or, if you petition the court and the bankruptcy court approves, it can go directly to the Ninth Circuit, the U.S. Court of Appeals. That's where I worked a long time ago, and I worked for the chief judge. That chief judge is the one who's going to be able to pick the trial court judge. And I believe he'll pick somebody who's extremely knowledgeable, probably has some accounting background, and may have some municipal background as well. He's going to search the entire Ninth Circuit, which goes all the way from Guam to Montana, and find a judge that he thinks will best fit this situation. Because this will be a bellwether case. This will be making new law. And a lot of it may be resolved at the trial court, or at the trial court level, the negotiations will continue, and maybe we'll resolve it without having to go through a confirmation hearing. Now, in this process, as I said, the law provides you the ability to address the bankruptcy court. You're a stakeholder. Private citizens in the municipality that file bankruptcy and people who own property here can address the court. That's phenomenal. How the judge is going to handle that, I'm not quite sure. But I can promise you that the judge is not going to be putting up with type of antics that we see going on around here. Because federal court is considerably different. I got disciplined one day for simply slamming papers down on opposing counsel's table. They don't put up with the shenanigans that go on in the state court, not as easily. So when you go into federal court, you need to be a little bit more polite to the judge, because they have a huge amount of power. And while they have this power, they're exercising the ability to control the record. These matters are tape recorded, and then if there's an appeal, they're going to listen to the tape recorder as well as read the court reporter's transcript. So the appellate panel or the appellate judge will have a pretty good understanding of what's going on. At the appellate panel, Judge Kosinski doesn't have any involvement as the chief judge in selecting who hears the appeal. That decision is made by the court clerk, and they do it on a rotating panel basis. They have names they basically draw out of a hat. And it's the luck of the draw. You get 3 judges out of all the judges that sit on the Ninth Circuit, which is the largest circuit in the United States. And then they'll hear that case. and they'll render an appellate decision. If that decision is made at the U.S. Court of Appeals level, it will be binding on all of the municipalities and all of the state governments throughout the western United States to the Ninth Circuit. It will establish very clear case law. Whereas a judge in San Diego or in Sacramento or wherever the trial court decision is made can render an opinion, but the other judges in the same court don't have to go along with that. That's called an advisory opinion. And then if it goes to a bankruptcy appellate panel and there's a decision, it's only binding on the district where it came out of. So the people in San Francisco could ignore what might come out of an Eastern Court district opinion. Now the real impact is what happens to us. We're down here. And if you're a vendor selling items to the city, I think you especially need to be concerned, because that's probably one of the things that's going to be an unsecured debt. Now historically, repayment bankruptcies, particularly Chapter 9s, have paid unsecured creditors 80–90% of the dollar, frequently in full, but it takes time. And if you're not prepared to either finance that undertaking to keep your employees going, then I think you need to look very closely at your business relationships with the city. If you're a citizen, I think you can probably expect that taxes are going to go up eventually. You know, we're going to pay for it one way or the other. It's important to remember, though, that all of these creditors are not enemies. They may be adversaries, they may be rivals, but when you get down to it, we're in this all together. And we're the ones who are going to have to solve this problem, whether it's through a reduction in what we pay, how we compute those salaries. You know, I worked for the State Personnel Board, and all we did all day long was run salary schedules so we could pay prevailing wages. And I don't think the city's ever done that. It probably needs to tap into that source of information with the State Personnel Board. It's a great way of finding out what people are getting paid. It also maybe needs to look at reorganizing things like the fire department to see how structurally it can be changed. But it's important to remember that even if the trustee is appointed by the state, the city council will continue to function in an advisory position, just as the school board has done. And the city council can certainly come up with these recommendations. The only difference is if there's a trustee involved, they don't get to implement them, they get to recommend them. And most likely a trustee is going to go along with it unless they have a pretty good reason not to. So that's a quick overview of Chapter 9, and I'm going to let J.D. do it. And believe me,